Back with another top 10, this time taking a look at the most unique venues in wrestling. Because why wrestle in a silly old arena when you can smash somebody's head in on aisle 9 of the local Sack and Go? But unlike that match, in order to make this list, the entire show, or at least most of it, must take place in a unique location. So sadly, no King of the Road, no boiler rooms, not allowed. Nah. But enough with the mindless filler we call an intro, let's take to the list. It's no secret that former president of WCW Eric Bischoff was quite fond of motorcycles and the culture that surrounds them, so I guess it should have come to no surprise when World Championship Wrestling decided to host a pay-per-view event during the famous Sturgis motorcycle rally in the heart of Sturgis, South Dakota. Surrounded by screaming Harleys, leather as far as the eye can see, and a unique outdoor stage and ring setup, Hog Wild would debut in 1996, running from 1997 to 1999 as Road Wild, thanks to threat of litigation from Harley-Davidson. Those pesky bastards. The venue, mixed with the long summer nights, made for some pretty incredible sunset shots. And the theming was carried through from the stages to the matches and even the attire of the commentary team. Unfortunately, it's been reported over the years that the conditions wrestlers were subjected to were less than ideal, but we can always be thankful that Hog Wild brought us a completely hammered Bobby Heenan who provided nearly 3 hours of hilarious drunken commentary. And spoiler alert, this won't be the only time WCW took to the outdoors. WCW was no stranger to recording shows at Disney's MGM Studios in Florida, as starting in 1993 they would film WCW Worldwide, WCW Pro, and WCW Prime under the bright lights of one of the park's backlot sets. But in 1996, with all of Turner Broadcasting's mobile production units being utilized to cover the Summer Olympics in Atlanta, Nitro was forced to improvise. Thankfully, the promotion already had production staff and equipment located at Disney's MGM Studios, so naturally this is where Nitro would host their live broadcast for the weeks during the Olympic Games. But unlike the other shows that were filmed here, these episodes would be shot outside, at the entrance of the park, giving us exciting backdrops like the Tower of Terror and that iconic Mickey water tower. The wrestlers would enter the ring area from a simplified version of the Nitro set, while bleachers filled with a few hundred fans surrounded the ring. In addition to featuring a rather unique venue, one of Nitro's most talked about moments would occur during these tapings when the newly formed NWO would invade the production area, causing a melee that would ultimately see Rey Mysterio get launched into the side of a trailer. Aw yes, good times. With a name like Bash at the Beach, what better place to host such an event than an actual real-life beach? And that's just what WCW did in 1995, taking to Huntington Beach, California in front of thousands of beachgoers. And I just said beach 4 times, well, now 5. It's actually quite the sight to see, as in many of these events the crowds are a bit smaller, but here you can clearly see that it's quite the turnout. And this wouldn't be the last time WCW hit the beach, because in 1999 the promotion teamed up with MTV to present WCW Beach Brawl from Cancun, Mexico. This event featured a series of wrestling matches that took place while Fear Factory performed live. Yeah, it was pretty much terrible, but it was still cool to see a WCW ring set up under a straw roof next to the water, with matches being called by the likes of Raven, Kid Rock, and Jimmy Hart. Oh, and they busted out the old WCW bullseye mat for this one, so extra points for that. In the late 90s, WCW started honing in on the young adult male demographic, and that was evident with the promotion's yearly spring breakout celebration. Starting in 1997 and continuing for 98 and 99, WCW would send its stars down to Panama City, Florida for a special edition of Nitro live from Club La Vela. They managed to squeeze most of the Nitro set design into the outdoor area, with a walkway leading from it down to the ring, which would be constructed over the club's pool, where it was more likely than not that at least one wrestler would be thrown into the water, or just willingly jump in, because what the hell. And with this being a party atmosphere, it's no surprise that many stories have come out over the years of wrestlers maybe having a bit too much fun before and after the show. In 2000, Spring Break breakout would hit South Padre Island in Texas, and while the event would return to Panama City for the very last episode of Nitro in 2001, it would instead take place at the Boardwalk Beach Resort, just a short sandy walk from Club La Vela. Sadly, these days, Club La Vela is no longer. Though the building remains, there was significant damage caused by Hurricane Michael, and the club never reopened. Club La Vela, along with WCW, are now all but memories. From the beach to the beach clubs and resorts of Florida to the snow. Seeing a trend here, WCW were quite the innovators when it came to venturing outside of the typical arena setting, and sometimes, well, they just didn't work. In January of 1999, the promotion hit the snowy slopes of Big Bear, California for this bizarre event. This was another joint venture between MTV and WCW and was basically the winter version of their Beach Brawl thingy. And this was just really all over the place, featuring a 7-man battle royal match. Yes, 7. Introductions by Stuttering John from The Howard Stern Show, dance numbers from the Nitro Girls, and commentary by Larry Zbyszko, Jimmy Hart, and Rob Zombie. You know, I wish I could have seen these events when they were airing back in '99, but even with me being a huge WCW fan and watching religiously, I didn't even know these were happening, so clearly they weren't promoted very heavily. Yeah, this show was pretty bad, but I can appreciate it for the simple fact that it takes place in the middle of the freaking snow. As we've seen, wrestling is no stranger to events near the sea, but how about on the sea? WCW once hosted its Bruise Cruise events, and WWF had the Wrestle Vessel, but those events didn't feature actual wrestling. They were more designed to be like meet and greet events, you know, hang out with the wrestlers and get to know them and maybe catch them eating a steak or something. However, in 2018, Chris Jericho, in collaboration with Ring of Honor, would host Chris Jericho's Rockin' Wrestling Rager at Sea of Honor. It's a mouthful. The event would take place on the Norwegian Jade, a jewel-class cruise ship with a passenger capacity of nearly 2,500 people. The ship would take fans from Miami to the Bahamas, all while providing 4 solid nights of professional wrestling to entertain the masses. Not gonna lie, this kinda looks like Club La Vela on the high seas, and I ain't mad at it. In January of 2020, the second wave would set sail. Let's see what they did there, second wave. This time with the wrestling promotion AEW. Some of the matches from this event were broadcast on AEW's weekly show Dynamite as part of the promotion's Bash at the Beach week. As you can see, this event is pretty cool to view in pictures or on TV, but I can only imagine how cool this atmosphere would be in person. Jericho and AEW would host 2 more events in 2021 and 2023, with a 5th scheduled in 2024. When WCW launched its weekly Monday night television show Nitro, they did it with a bang, with its debut episode hitting television sets live from the Mall of America in Minneapolis, Minnesota. Not only did we get to see a ring posted up in the middle of a shopping mall next to a giant glass elevator and people hanging from all over the balconies above to catch a glimpse of the action, but we also got to see stuff like Pasta Mania and the shocking return of Lex Luger fresh off of his defection from the WWF. Shots fired. In all honesty, this is still one of my favorite episodes of Nitro, and I still make sure to watch it at least once or twice a year. It's one of the coolest visuals I've seen in the business, and it really left a lasting impression on me that still remains to this day. Nitro got its start in a shopping mall, it died on a beach resort, a telling tale of just how strange WCW could be. On Independence Day 1993, the WWF would host the Stars and Stripes Challenge aboard the USS Intrepid, a World War II naval aircraft carrier. The WWF champion, Yokozuna, would invite anybody who might be brave enough to attempt a body slam on the big man. Many tried, from WWF superstars to other pro athletes, but none prevailed. That is, until off in the distance, arriving by helicopter, Lex Luger emerges, donning the red, white, and blue of the good old US of A. Luger was successful in body slamming Yokozuna and rising to a whole new level of superstar as the American hero was born. It doesn't get much more American than fighter jets, helicopters, and a wrestling ring atop an aircraft carrier on the 4th of July. On Christmas Day of 2003, WWE would air a special edition of SmackDown called Christmas from Baghdad. Not only was this episode dedicated to our hard-working men and women serving overseas, but the WWE wrestlers and crews would actually make the trip halfway around the world and into the desert, as this event was held at Camp Victory in Baghdad, Iraq. This truly was a sight to see, as the typical fans you'd see at a wrestling event were now replaced with men and women from the US military, and military trucks and tanks surround the familiar blue trimmed ring that just really appears kind of out of place here. This event would feature numerous matches and segments and would become a yearly special called Tribute to the Troops, which would take to military bases in Iraq and Afghanistan before eventually hosting events domestically. A version of this venue would even make it into the WWE video game world, cementing its presence as one of the most unique venues in wrestling. WWF Shotgun Saturday Night was a wrestling show created specifically to take events out of the typical arena setting and into the New York City nightlife, taking to the likes of nightclubs and restaurants. But the most unique episode of this bizarre format would take place on February 8th, 1997, from Penn Station in New York City. For those not familiar with it, Penn Station is the main intercity railroad station in New York City and the busiest transportation facility in the entire Western Hemisphere. Undertaker would face Triple H in one of the wildest matches in wrestling history, because not only was it strange to see this match taking place in a ring set up in the middle of a train station, but it would get even more interesting as the two wrestlers would venture outside of the squared circle, ending with Trips taking a tombstone piledriver on the top of an escalator. Yes, you heard that right. Sadly, this format of the show wouldn't last for very long, and Shotgun Saturday Night would quickly become just another weekly arena show. But thanks to this outside-of-the-box creative thinking, we got arguably the most unique wrestling venue of all time. So what do you think about the list? Accurate? What are some other shows that you can think of that took place in a completely non-traditional location? I'm sure there's plenty out there, especially once you start venturing into the smaller promotions. Let me know in the comments below, and I shall see you next time. Bye.